My players had just arrived in Cliffport, a bustling trade hub nestled between a pair of massive rock faces. I was excited. Two of my players were connected to a gang known as the Brand, named for the magical tattoos members got on their necks, and here in the seaside city, things would come to a head. They both knew the criminals were after them, and I had planned out a whole host of things that the party could get up to in pursuit of upending their enemies. Little did I know, I was about to learn a very valuable lesson for DMing, one that still guides me to this day. So what exactly went down in Cliffport? Without further ado, let's get started. The Brand were headquartered in a massive tavern called Draven's Den, one of the most famous spaces for partying, gambling, and getting up to trouble on this side of the continent. Their operations lay beneath the building, where they secretly had living quarters for their members, growing rooms for the illicit substances that they traded in, and the office of Scourge, the group's leader and final boss for this little mini-arc. It was a proper dungeon, but how they got inside would be up to them. Sure, they could just fight their way in through the front door, found in the tavern's VIP section and only open to members of the Brand, but I had planned two different paths that they could take to gain access instead. One was through the group's financier, an elf named Dorel. When he wasn't busy cooking the books for the Brand, he could be found in the local pseudo-dragon fighting ring. If the party could infiltrate the event and capture him, he'd tell them how to get into the lair through secret tunnels that very few knew about. Second was the muscle of the group, a Goliath called Fang. They had learned his name already from a note that they found on the body of a would-be assassin, and if they asked around, they'd learn he spent most of his time in Draven's Den's VIP section. Getting inside and luring him out, maybe with a mix of drinks, banter, or magic trickery, would give them a chance to subdue the brute and get them to reveal how they could get brands of their own. Able to disguise themselves as members, they could then sneak in without any bloodshed. I had spent a good chunk of time coming up with encounters, detailing NPCs, designing shops and layers and rings. I couldn't wait to see what my players chose. So what did they do? Well, when they arrived in the city, the two that were marked for death broke off from the rest of the party, headed straight for Draven's Den. There they started drinking and gambling and were eventually recognized by members of the Brand, which wasn't hard since they literally went up to a few and started asking them to play dice games. The criminals responded by inviting the two back into the tavern's VIP section. Do you see where this is going? And promptly clearing out any other patrons. At this point, my players got a little suspicious, but it was too late. Fang approached the two, incredulous that they had the gall to stroll right into the heart of their operations. Seeing no way to escape, the two players attacked, and a huge brawl broke out. Thankfully, the rest of the party managed to catch up, and over the course of a few real-life hours, they proceeded to, against all odds, take down scores of Brand members, Fang, and the crew's boss, Scourge. Just like that, quest completed. Now, I should probably mention that there was some drinking involved in how things shook out, both in and out of character. To be fair to my players, we're all still pretty new at the game, and weren't as invested in the story and world as we all are now, years later. I probably should have reminded them about the note they got and the stakes here, but when they first wandered into the tavern and the massive fight started, I was upset. I had put a lot of time into planning out different routes and trying to come up with characters, scenarios, and intrigue, just for them to walk right in and essentially skip everything. But when I started really paying attention to what was unfolding at the table, my mood completely shifted. My players were in a very tense battle, one that could have easily ended in characters dying. They all survived, but the fear and stress they were feeling was real, more than I could have manufactured on my own. And when it was all said and done, it ended up being one of the craziest sessions we've ever had. We still bring it up years later as the massacre at Draven's Den. That sort of genuine memory probably isn't made if everything goes to plan. That's why my number one rule of DMing is this: player agency trumps all. When I say agency, I mean the party's ability to make decisions and push the story forward, even if it's in a direction I wasn't prepared for. Whatever I have planned, wherever I thought we were heading, the party decides to go right instead of left, we're heading right. That's not to say I never plan anything. To the contrary, I still do a lot of prep for my games. But I do it with the understanding that there's a chance it won't get used, or that it may not come up when I expect it to. Oftentimes, the players will follow the path I've laid out for them, or if they do go way off course, they'll eventually circle back around or be gently guided back by me. But sometimes they miss things that I have planned, and that's okay. If it's their choice, I'll honor it. Besides, you can almost always repurpose your prep if it gets skipped over. The governor's mansion they didn't end up infiltrating? Add some cobwebs and slap on a ghost encounter, and now it's a haunted house that your party will find in the woods. The secret lair the party never visited? Well, that's the headquarters of the Thieves Guild one town over that they did accidentally tick off. In fact, that's exactly what happened with the pseudo-dragon fighting ring. Later on, after they'd gotten things cleared up with the local guards, the party were looking for ways to make some extra cash. So I had an NPC direct them to the ring, where they were able to bet on fights and do some spying on the interesting patrons present. No need to throw things away when they can be recycled instead. When your players push the story forward, it can also give you opportunities to make the story stronger and the world feel more alive. Because they stormed the castle and took out most of the brand, I wondered who would fill the vacuum of power in the city's criminal underbelly. The financier, Dorell, had been spared during the attack, so I had him secretly take over Draven's Den and its operations under the banner of a bigger, more dangerous criminal syndicate. When my players returned to town, they were offered work by this new group, and things didn't exactly go well for them. They're still dealing with the repercussions in the campaign to this day, all because of their choices, which makes it much more impactful than if I just decided these were their enemies now. To be clear, I'm not implying you should always say yes to your players. There's a big difference between letting them alter the story and letting them break the game. There's still a time and place for following the rules, and you absolutely can still put time into planning, prepping, and coming up with the framework of the story. I have many great memories of moments and battles that I cooked up for my players and they got to experience at the table. But what makes D&D and tabletop games in general so special is that you and your players are creating a story together. Their ability to make choices, do the unexpected, and take the narrative in directions that you could never see coming keeps the game fun and exciting, even if it means having to put your notes aside sometimes. Player agency trumps all. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have your own stories of players taking control and surprising you, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. If you've been DMing long enough, chances are you probably do. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a like and consider subscribing to the Bard's College. I make videos about D&D, DMing, and everything in between, so if you like this one, stick around. But for now, good luck, and remember, crit your players.